Greetings, groovy people! Welcome to the channel. This is the monthly Q&A. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This is an art-related channel targeting an adult audience, and every month I answer questions primarily from my patrons and Subscribe Star members, but also questions from readers or viewers in general, always giving precedence to those who are patrons or subscribers. So this month I didn't really get that many questions. I got 2 questions. No, wait, I got 3 questions. Yeah, I need to look at my notes. But in the background, just a heads up, I am inking an image for my Subscribe Star members. Those are pinups, and you can only see the finished version that is digitally colored on Subscribe Star. So if you want to see how this piece ends up, because I'd make a mistake later on when I'm inking, I accidentally dropped some ink on this. If you want to see what the finished version looks like, you can become a member of Subscribe Star at the link down in the description. It is for adults only because I do pinups and everything I do is relatively adult related. So I am not going to be labeling this as not safe for work because the nudity is just not, it's just like classical art. It's not like anything sensual or seductive. It's just classical art. Someone sitting topless, and it's inspired by Muka, who's been one of my favorite artists. He was just a fantastic artist. I really loved his style, and I quite often like to kind of do my own renditions or stuff that's influenced by Muka. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. First question I have is, do you give critiques? They weren't soliciting a critique at this point, but they were just kind of, I think, feeling the waters. On occasion, I will do critiques, if I have time and I'm part of a forum or I'm looking at a critique section of a forum, I will sometimes give people who are soliciting critique, some tips or anything, to what I think my level of art is. I'm not always good at pointing everything out, because of my own skill level, but if there's some glaring things that I feel I can weigh in on because someone has asked, I will do that occasionally. I have done critiques for different judgings that I've been a part of. I did a Tapas judging, Veteran of Indie Comics, something that was being rewarded over on Tapas not by Tapas itself. I've got issues with the platform, but I'm not going to get into that here. But from a member of the community, I was part of a team for that, and people who were judged were allowed to request critiques of their comic, and so a handful of people did ask for that, and so I've done critiques in that sort of environment before. And I also had to do some critiquing that was not really given to people unless they requested reasons why they were rejected from a zine submission that I was allowed, or that I was part of the collective of, and so I was offered the chance to be a judge of that, and to kind of help pull my own weight, I did judging for that, and so I had to essentially give a critique to explain why I voted yay, nay, or whatever, or maybe, whatever it is. So I do critiques like that occasionally, but they are very time consuming, and so I don't look for people volunteering for critiques very often just because I don't generally have a lot of time. I will occasionally do that in forums. If somebody asked me to do a critique of a drawing or something, an image, I could be open to doing that, but I don't really give critiques of people's comics. I feel like I have enough issues in my own comics. It's extremely time consuming also, and if I'm going to be tasked with something or if I'm going to take something on, I like to give people my full attention and be as careful and concise as I possibly can. And doing so obviously is a type of labor, and so I don't necessarily have that amount of time, especially this year. Although I have had it on my list for like community engagements, like my annual resolutions, I do have it on my list to give critiques. That what I usually will do is, as I just mentioned, kind of go into like forums and see who needs help or who's asking for help. I've given people suggestions or comments over on Tapas. I've done it on Comic Theory. Those are primarily the places where I will give critique, only because people are seeking critique. Do I give unsolicited critiques? Nah, man, that's rude. I mean, it's okay to ask if somebody wants it because you are passionate about what they're doing, like maybe you like their comic or their art and you see them struggling with something, and because you're a fan of theirs, you know, you want to help them out. If you ask someone, that's one thing, but me, from my perspective, I don't feel confident enough to just stroll up to somebody's life work or what they're doing and say, hey, I got some pointers for you because this is you know, not as good as it could be. Sometimes that can be helpful, but just the way I was raised to be fairly to attempt to be fairly respectful of other people's feelings and emotions, and so I don't personally feel brazen enough to go up to some total stranger on the internet that I've never talked to before and say, hey, you want me to critique your art for you? Now, having said that, I've had a couple people do that to me, and usually I'll accept it, and then I will like weigh whether or not their critique is valuable to me or not, and in a couple instances, it has been valuable. Yeah, I've been critiqued a couple times, and usually I try to be polite to those people, and quite often, you know, once you get past that barrier and they start seeing you as a human being, they'll be a lot better with their critique and the way they phrase things, I think. So, I mean, that's just how I approach people, because a lot of times people will come up and be like an asshole. Like I had on my personal account, I'd uploaded a poem that I had read off as reference for like a video that I did a while back, and somebody had come into the comments section and was like, Milton would have wished he was deaf too if he heard you reading his poem, which, to be honest, they were being an asshole, but that made me crack the fuck up. So, like, I just laughed, and I was like, yeah, that's true, you know, and they ended up being really polite, like, afterwards, because, you know, I didn't immediately meet them with anger at what they said. I don't know, man, that's just how I deal with things, but if they're being disrespectful, they might necessarily not deserve to be treated with respect, but personally, I've had better outcomes dealing with people that way, because usually they just have something to say and they want someone to listen to them, you know what I'm saying? I think that thoroughly answers my question, and I kind of answered more than what was even asked. So let's go ahead and move on to the next question. How do you refill Copic markers? I don't know, man. I'm the wrong person to ask. How do I? Okay. Here's my literal answer. What I do is I take it to an art supply store. Like, in the past, I've taken them to Dick Blick, which is a chain. So that's something that people quite often will have access to. Or like what I do now is I go to a locally owned art supply store, Collage, and I will ask them to have it refilled. So that's how I personally refill my Copic markers. However, I do have an instructional booklet on how to refill them yourself, and that probably would be like a more economical way of doing it, but time is kind of like a precious commodity. I will usually not buy refills. In fact, I've never bought a refill kit because I don't want to like mess up and waste stuff, and it's just easier for me to drop it off, pay a couple bucks, $3, whatever, and have it refilled. And so that's how I usually do it. If you're having trouble finding a place that will refill your Copics, call around. A place like Michael's probably is not going to do it, but if you have like a local art supply store in your town, give them a call and ask. That's how I found places that do it. I just call and ask, and if they do it, they do it, and if they don't, they don't. If you don't have access to that because of wherever you live, you could learn to refill them yourself. However, I would go to like the Copic website and see if they have any tips and tricks on how to do that without like spilling ink all over and wasting, you know, your product that you purchased. And finally, what's going on with Aradia Beat? I was really hot and heavy talking about that all through the month, man. It's still going on. We're going to be having the Kickstarter in January of 2023. There's a couple reasons for this. I'm not going to get into details because it's, kind of technical stuff, but apparently there's quite often like a lull in like interest towards the end of November because Kickstarters, the stuff will be mailed out later than the Kickstarter completion date. So a lot of times people, I guess, I haven't done this research myself, but I've heard people say this, there's a lull in Kickstarter support quite often, especially with like new projects that people aren't, they aren't familiar with the people. But the project is like pretty much complete. When that Kickstarter begins, it's going to be in January of 2023. I will continue talking about this project and giving y'all updates, but the zine itself is pretty much complete. All the work is done. So it's going, as long as the project gets funded, there is very little to worry about project completion wise because it's done. We just need, to add adverts that people, if they select that tier of the Kickstarter, so everything else is done. The cover, the back cover, everything. So I'll be getting back to y'all later about that once the Kickstarter is up, but I'll also be doing maybe 1 or 2 more videos. I don't know how many more videos I'm going to do. Yeah, it's still going on, and there will be more information on it very soon, starting in January of 2023. And that's all I've got to say this month regarding the questions. Wow. Thank you all for watching. If you're interested in what I do, if you want to support the channel, there's links down in the description. I'm sorry if I sound a little tired. It's just, I had a week at my mom's and, all day traveling last week, and now I'm trying to catch up on videos and stuff. So, yeah, I'm a little bit, I haven't had breakfast yet either. Oh my god, it's almost noon. Anyway, peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.